Welcome to the Health Ranger Report. This is Mike Adams, Health Ranger, here on TalkNetwork.com with a very special report for you today about conscious awakening and awareness. We're going to do some exercises with you here to help show you that you've been living in a dream world, Neo, and it's time to take the red pill and wake up and really see the reality that you've been missing, the reality that has been constructed as a prison for your mind. All right, to quote the Matrix. So, let's start with this. Let's do this intellectual exercise together. And by the way, this is an exercise that anyone can do, even people who don't believe that they need to be awakened. They think that they're already aware of everything, but especially the naive who think that, everything's fine, the government tells the truth, the media reports the truth, so on and so forth. Drug companies just want to help cure people. That's it. They're not interested in making money. For those people especially, this is going to be a very valuable exercise. So let's all start with some things that we can absolutely agree upon. Let's start in the nation of North Korea. Now, if you know anything at all about North Korea, you know that it is a nation of blind obedience. All the citizens of North Korea are required, at gunpoint, to worship their God leader. They call him the great leader or dear leader, Kim Jong-un, the son of Kim Jong-il. These are considered gods or deities by the people of North Korea, and their wisdom, supposed wisdom, is considered absolute. And the people of North Korea are, of course, denied access to the internet. They're denied access to television or broadcast or cable or radio. They're denied access to books and magazines and videos, movies from the Western world. They are completely isolated from the information that the rest of the world has access to, and they are completely controlled. Their education system is controlled to teach a version of history that their dear leader wants them to think is real. Their universities are completely controlled by the government. The media of North Korea is completely controlled by the government. North Korea is the best example of absolute government totalitarianism on our planet today. Now, so I haven't said anything, hopefully, that is controversial yet, because everything I just said is absolute fact. That's the way it is in North Korea. And if you didn't know that, then just watch some documentaries about it. You'll be quite shocked. Even when Kim Jong-il died, the citizens were required at gunpoint to cry and sob, and there are these hilarious videos on YouTube showing the citizens having to cry at gunpoint or be arrested and thrown in the gulag, the secret prisons, which are enormous in North Korea. Now, along those lines, there's only one nation, I think, that has a larger prison population than North Korea, and if you are an American, you are living in it. America has the largest prison population in the world, but I'll get to that in a minute. Going back to North Korea, here's the question to you. If you were born in North Korea and you were a North Korean citizen, do you understand that you would be acting just like all the other North Koreans? That you would be worshiping the dear leader, that you would have been taught that false history, you would be propagandized by the fake government-controlled media. Do you understand that? You see, the people of North Korea do not realize that they are being lied to. Most of them don't. There are a few dissidents and people who try to escape and so on, smugglers of information. There's always that underground, radical element that's trying to overthrow the North Korean government. And good for them, by the way. But they are imprisoned and killed and oppressed. Obviously, there's a lot of fear that's used to control the citizens of North Korea. So most of the people of North Korea do not realize that anything that they believe is true is actually false. So this is a very important principle to really understand. And it's a principle that says there are people who live under government regimes around the world who are living in a completely fictional reality that has been constructed for them by their government. Right? So if you agree with that principle, and I hope you do, because if you don't, you're simply not informed or not able to think rationally or not logical or whatever. If you agree with that premise, then we can start to ask the question, well, what other countries exist in our world where the people are living under a completely fabricated reality and the government is lying to them, and the government-controlled media is lying to them, the corporations are lying to them, the school system is lying to them, and so on. Once you understand that that does exist, and that is not a crazy conspiracy theory, that is North Korea today, then you can start to say, well, what about China? What about mainland China? Well, mainland China is also a communist regime, a dictatorial regime, with a lot of controls over information. You have the Great Wall of China, right? You have total censorship of the internet. You have them arresting, sometimes, I think the last arrest was 17,000 so-called dissidents for, quote, internet crimes, which could mean posting a blog talking about the stock market crash, or talking about government corruption, or expressing an opinion that the government doesn't want you to express. So China also controls its school system and its media, and teaches a false history, and teaches a false running news report on current events. China actually, like when the recent stock market jitters hit mainland China, they were out there, arresting reporters and putting out government propaganda that said everything's going to be fine. This is just a small correction. Keep buying stocks. And they, by the way, they criminalize the selling of many corporate stocks to try to keep that stock market up. So now, hopefully, you understand that the people of North Korea don't realize that they're living in a fictional reality constructed by a fake, a government, a propagandized government. And you also hopefully agree that the people of China are also living in a fabricated reality created by an oppressive dictatorial government. So now we have at least two examples on our planet, and if you start to really look around the world, you're going to find more and more examples. Now here's the real awakening in all of this. If a human being who is born in North Korea, grows up in North Korea or China, and is highly intelligent, an intelligent, capable person, a human being with free will, a conscious mind, a spirit just like you and I, if that person is unable to see outside the matrix in which they are living, then what makes you think that you can see outside the matrix in which you have been living? This is the most important question of this entire report. You see, because what I'm going to suggest is that you are living in a matrix even in America or Canada or the UK, wherever you happen to be listening from. You are living in a matrix. You are living under a government that controls the public schools, that teaches a false history, a government that controls the media and teaches or reports false propaganda as if it were fact. You are living under a regime that is pure theater, a government system of corruption and false narratives that it's played out on a stage for you to keep you enslaved in a system. And those systems may differ economically around the world, but they all have the same goal, which is total enslavement. In America, the enslavement is achieved by consumerism and debt. So you are a debt slave. You are a wage slave. In North Korea, the enslavement is really more blatant. It's gunpoint enslavement, slave labor in the prison camps. In China, it's more of an economic enslavement and dissociation from truthful information to keep people, to limit their choices, especially on political matters. For example, you have the oppression of the Falun Gong meditation group, / Buddhist religion group. China doesn't want people to be able to meditate. They don't want people to be able to achieve higher awareness, and they don't even want people really to practice too much Christianity, although Christianity is rising very quickly in China. But they used to confiscate Bibles and throw people in prison. Well, what do you have in America? You have the criminalization of mind-expanding drugs, for example. I'm not just talking about marijuana. I'm talking about some of the molecules that have been used in experiments that some people say connects them to the divine. There's a great movie on this called DMT, the spirit molecule, and DMT is a molecule that, for some reason, somehow expands human consciousness and allows people to connect to who they are. It's a way to bypass the matrix, and it's found in certain types of mushrooms, by the way. And I've never ever used DMT, so I can't speak from firsthand experience, but in studying what has been written out there, even in clinical scientific settings, when they've done experiments on willing volunteers at universities who were given just a single dose of DMT, a shockingly large percentage of those people reported that it was the single most profound and divine experience of their entire lifetimes. And it changed their outlook on life. It changed their personality from that day forward. It was mind expanding. Now, is there a reason why a society that wants to control people would criminalize that molecule? Yes, of course. It's just another system of enslavement. So there's economic enslavement. There is this banning of chemicals that might open your mind. There is a wage slave kind of imprisonment, debt systems, and of course gunpoint imprisonment. These are all different systems of keeping you down and keeping you enslaved, and they're all systems that are invoked by governments that keep you trapped in a false narrative, completely fabricated, like a Truman Show. You remember that movie with Jim Carrey, Truman Show? You're living in a Truman Show, just like the people of North Korea. And we're going to talk about this more as we come back, so stay tuned. This is the Health Ranger Report here on TalkNetwork.com. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Health Ranger Report here on TalkNetwork.com. This is one of the most important shows I've ever done, and I thank you for listening. I hope you're already learning and expanding your concepts of reality in this. So just to recap so far, we've talked about how people around the world who are raised and born in corrupt government-controlled regimes are unable to see outside that matrix of control because they have been indoctrinated by it. And, you know, it's interesting to look back in history and ask yourself an honest question. If you were born in Germany in, let's say, 1905 or something, and you were raised as a German citizen and you were part of the German upper class, you were doing well in Germany throughout the boom of the 1920s and the early 1930s, and you were a connected citizen of Germany, which was one of the most advanced societies of the world. In fact, much of the scientific achievement of that era came out of Berlin. The German scientists really dominated the realm of science through 1920s, 1930s, and up until the end of World War II, at which time it shifted more towards American scientists. But if you were part of that society, ask yourself this question: would you have been a Nazi? Would you have been a Nazi? Well, what was the Nazi at the time from the perception of those people? Those people thought it was just the in thing. It was the positively, this is the way Hitler even described it, that they want to improve the world. They want to change the world. They want to promote an enhanced human race is the way they described it. Eugenics. They would talk about killing off the elderly as a way to conserve more resources for the betterment of society. They would have posters that say we should kill the handicapped. We should do all these things. The infirm, the diseased, they should all just be euthanized so that we can grow the society for the betterment of everyone. And this very powerful nationalistic message resonated with the German people at the time. especially the upper class, the elite, the politically connected. Those are the exact same people who in America today are the kind of people who are politically connected to the White House, to the Obama administration, to the Nancy Pelosi's of the world. The same kind of people. If you had taken those people and transplanted them into Germany in 1932, I guarantee you they would have been good little Nazis. Why? Because it was the same phenomenon happening. You take the same people, you transplant them into a different country, a different era, but the same kind of events unfolding, they would be right on board with it. Most people don't rock the boat. Most people don't challenge the status quo. Most people don't say anything against their own government. Most people go along and get along, which means that if you had been born as a German citizen and you were, let's say, a young adult, up and coming, maybe someone in their 30s, connected, successful in the business community in, let's say, 1937, you probably would have been a Nazi. Now, if you can't accept that fact, then, one of two things. Number one, you're either lying to yourself or you are truly someone who challenges the status quo very, very strongly, no matter what era you are in. Like myself, I know that if I had been alive in that era, I would have been challenging the government official line. I would have been saying, hey, wait a minute, what are these crematoriums doing over here in boxcars full of Jewish people being carted into these ovens? I would have been raising the alarm on that. And you know what? I would have been called anti-government. I would have been called a conspiracy theorist, and it would have been reported in the German press, as it was, that it is a massive conspiracy that Jewish people are being cooked in large ovens. I mean, how ridiculous is that, according to the German press of the time, right? They just painted everybody as a conspiracy theorist, or they had them arrested and killed, or, hey, you could join the Jews in the oven and you can be killed too for daring to speak out about this thing that we say isn't happening, but it actually is. So most people, 99% of the people, would have just gone along. They would have been good little Nazis. So, including most of the people probably listening to this would have been good little Nazis, because that's what humans are really programmed to do, is to socially fit in. And how do you know if you would have been a good Nazi? Because if you are politically correct and you are doing everything to fit in, if you've ever caught yourself saying, as that recent South Park episode covered, that Caitlyn Jenner is a hero. You know, if you've actually said that, then you are someone who strongly desires to fit in, and you surrender to social pressure. And that social pressure could say anything. That social pressure could say that they want to kill a certain ethnic race, like the Jewish people. That social pressure could be genocidal, and you would still go along with it, because that's what you do. You go along with whatever is the status quo. Now, I'm not trying to insult you, by the way. I'm trying to wake you up by helping you realize just how susceptible all of us are to these social pressures. The awakened individual is someone who is not tied down with the baggage of current societal norms, which means that the most awakened person is the most politically incorrect person that you will meet. So, someone who speaks the language of political correctness is a massive obedient conformist. And right now we have so many insane examples of political correctness. You know, we've got these universities now saying you can't use male pronouns like his, or you can't use the word man as in like a postman or a congressman. You know, congressman, you can't say that. You have to say a congressperson. And they've made up fake words that replace male gender pronouns with gender neutral pronouns. So they're now developing their own Orwellian double speak, language, which is designed to eliminate knowledge from language so that everything's dumbed down and no one actually says anything of any real meaning. That's happening right now across America's universities. So a lot of people are going along with that. They would have been great little Nazis because they just go along with whatever the most absurd thing is, as long as it's the status quo. They feel comfortable following the sheeple. right? They're not leaders. They're not independent thinkers. The true independent thinkers in every era have never, or I should say rarely, have they ever been popularized in the pop culture of that era. You take great thinkers like, for example, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was not a super popular person, or even speaking of other founders like John Adams. John Adams was celebrated as a brilliant man, an intellectual, someone who understood liberty, someone who understood the importance of protecting the powers, the rights of individuals, but he was not a socialite. I mean, the social scene, in essence, tolerated him for some time, but not for very long. So if you go throughout history, you look at those who had truly cast aside the baggage of social pressure and political correctness. They were not popular people, but they were intellectual giants. They were people who understood that there is a lot more to life than fitting in. And if you're trying to just win friends and have the biggest party and be the most popular person, that is a path that you can take, but it is not a path to truth. The path to truth is so very often a lonely path. Seeking truth is a path that few dare walk because it takes them away from all of the congratulatory affection of their peers. So to walk the path of truth is, throughout history, a fairly lonely walk, and yet it is a highly rewarding walk. It is, in many ways, the most rewarding walk of all. It's the walk that can expand your mind in ways that the popular culture can never even imagine. And that's why I think you probably are listening to this, because you are an explorer of truth. You are someone who seeks to discover truth, and you're more interested in truth than you are in whatever is the current popular trend. All right? So what is truth? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. Obviously, that's a very complex subject, but you can start by knowing that the things you have been taught in society are definitely not the truth. You have been living in a fictional framework. From almost the day you were born, the things that you were taught even by your own parents are based on the similar societal falsehoods that your parents were taught. And these are societal myths and narratives that are handed down from generation to generation, and there are so many of these myths that unraveling them would take many, many years of study. But I'll give you a few examples. One of the myths, for example, is that government is here to take care of you, or another myth is that everything that exists in the world is material. This is the myth upon which modern science is entirely based, by the way. The reductionism model, really it's called materialism, that assumes that the physical is all that is, and there's nothing that is not either mass or energy. And that's what they believe, and that's why they're so wrong. That's why they miss out on so many truths. Nevertheless, we'll continue this after the break. Hope you're finding this interesting. This is the Health Ranger here on the Health Ranger Report at TalkNetwork.com. Welcome back to the Health Ranger Report. We're talking about how to question your reality, especially when it comes to politics and modern culture, education. Everything around you has been created for you as a fictional construct. You believe many, many falsehoods. Even if you are a truther or an awakened person, there are still many falsehoods that you have to work through and eliminate one by one. The process of awakening is actually a process of deprogramming yourself from all the falsehoods that have been programmed into you by your parents, by your schools, by society, by the CNN, the media, government, your peers, and so on. It's really a deprogramming process. But I want to bring in another really interesting thought experiment here that will show you just how easily you can be hoodwinked by this false reality under which you currently live. Because I know there might be some listening who are still not convinced that they have been hoodwinked. We tend to think that, we individually, that we are sharp people. We are We are on the ball. We can tell the difference between fact and fiction. We each of us tends to really overestimate our ability to discern truth from falsehood. And this is why advertising works on people. This is why it's so effective. You can show ads to people, ads for Coca-Cola or beer or cigarettes or whatever. And those people can watch the ads and literally say to you, yeah, I see those ads, but they don't affect me. I don't let them affect me. They don't change the way I purchase things at the store. They do not affect me in any way whatsoever. And yet, statistically, those people will go out and they will buy those products and they won't know why. That's how effective advertising is, because it works on the emotional level, not the rational level. It bypasses rational logic, bypasses the ability of your brain to filter out false information, and operates at a more animalistic level. So many things in society are designed to work this way, and that's how they bypass your rational thinking. This is why so many of the political agendas, like gun control, are framed in the language of emotion. They stage a mass shooting, they show a lot of blood, they have children paraded on the TV screen as being killed, and sometimes it's real, sometimes it's complete theater. And what matters to them, though, is that it's a strong emotional narrative that bypasses your rational thinking. So mass shootings are played out in front of you on on the world's stage in exactly the same way that emotional advertising gets you to buy Tide laundry detergent. It's the same method. It's emotional social engineering, and it's used in politics, elections. It's used in political agendas. It's used in advertising. It's used in so many areas of modern society that it would blow your mind if you started to really peel back the curtain on these and see just all the ways that you have been manipulated. But there's one area that I really want to draw your attention to, and that is dreaming. I'm talking about REM sleep. At night, you're having a dream. Now, think about what is a dream really from an experiential point of view. In this dream, you feel as if the dream is real. And the dream is actually played out for your conscious mind as a simulation constructed by your unconscious mind. So this dream is a form of theater, and this theater can involve, bizarre things. Many people dream of flying or swimming underwater or sometimes speaking other languages or living in different countries or traveling to the moon or whatever. And no matter how absurd the dream is, you think it's real. You're there, your consciousness is there experiencing the dream, and even though that dream may have you in a totally different location, geography, it may even have you at a different age than what you are now, it may have you in different circumstances, totally different, living in a different house or whatever, you think it's real. And why is that? Why do you think a dream is real when it's obviously, rationally, not real? Because some of the facts don't match up with what you should know about your life, how old you are, who's your husband or wife, what house you live in, where you work, what school you went to, what city you live in, and so on. If those facts don't match up, you should be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, this doesn't seem real. Maybe I'm dreaming. That, by the way, that thought of, hey, maybe I'm dreaming, that thought is called lucid dreaming. The word lucid coming from lucidity, meaning awareness. So it's called lucid dreaming when you become self-aware in a dream. And many people are very skilled at doing this. They can, through effort and training, they can become lucid in the dream, and then they can take over the dream. Instead of the dream being played out to them as a form of theater, they are able to then rewrite the script of that in real time and change the dream as they're going along to say, wait a minute, I don't want this dream to work this way. Let's do something different. They can change the characters, change the scene. They can fly. They can swim underwater. Some people have even been able to literally, well, I can't say literally, consciously transform their bodies in the dreams into, believe it or not, other animals or shapes or beings. It sounds kind of weird, but these are just experiments that people have done to try to determine what are the boundaries. Like in your dream, are you limited to your physical body? And the answer is no. You can change it once you take control of the dream. But this ability to question your dream and become aware in your dream is very rare. Most people never experience this in their entire lives. Now, I'm a lucid dreamer, so I've experienced this many times. And I've studied it and read a lot about it and practiced it and so on. So it's something that I'm able to do. And I do believe that people who are lucid dreamers tend to be more aware in their waking life because they have developed the skill of always questioning the reality around them. This is a very important skill. If you question your reality at all times, you'll be a lucid dreamer, but a lucid living person. You're self-aware, in other words, when you are awake. And if you look at the high-level meditation of Buddhism or Hinduism, or even the highest levels of Christianity and other world religions, what they are describing as achievements of their top gurus, like Jesus in Christianity, is the mastery of self-awareness. And this was certainly the case with Buddha. The mastery of self-awareness as you are awake. So self-awareness in a waking moment or a waking life, to maintain this self-awareness throughout your waking consciousness, is to many the highest achievement of this physical lifetime. To be able to, in essence, transcend the theater that is played out in front of you and to become self-aware and be able to then change this dream of life, change it as you are moving through it to achieve the outcomes that you want. Now, I know this is starting to get a little bit esoteric and maybe even starting to sound a little bit new agey. There's a whole realm of thought called the law of attraction, of course, which talks about how to create your own reality by focusing on it. There are some problems with this law of attraction because a lot of people don't take any action. They just sit in a room and meditate, and they don't actually go out in the world and take actions to achieve their goals. And so it fails on them. And I've even done another special report called Why the Law of Attraction Fails Without Action. You have to combine self-awareness with action in this physical world in order to get things done. Nevertheless, if you go to the highest levels of all of these ideas, whether it's New Age ideology, the law of attraction, and even religion, you get to a place where self-awareness is the top goal. And self-awareness in a dream, remember, is called lucid dreaming, and self-awareness in waking life is called, just self-awareness or higher consciousness. And by the way, just as a side note, there are some people who have trouble with the word lucid. I've actually run into some people who are they think that the word lucid implies like demons or devils because of Lucifer, and all I can say is I did not invent the word, and I do understand that there are demonic forces in our world today for sure, but I'm not using that term lucid to imply any kind of demonic overtones. I'm just saying self-awareness in the dream. So if you don't like the term lucid, just go with self-aware in the dream, because let's get down to the basics here. We are talking about not allowing yourself to be overtaken by evil forces of any kind, whether it's a government or a demon or whatever, and instead taking charge of your life by having awareness of who you are, where you are, what you're doing, and what you wish to accomplish in your life. So awareness is the opposite of enslavement. And whereas evil forces of our world want to enslave you, and whether, that could be a government, that could be a corporation, that could be an energetic demon-like force, perhaps. There are evil forces that are diligently working to destroy, I think, humanity. But it could also be something just simpler, like, your local corrupt government wants to economically enslave you. And then self-awareness is freedom. So once you can escape these fictions that have been played out for you, that have been constructed all around you, then you are able to achieve real freedom. And so I know we've gone pretty far down the rabbit hole here already, but starting from where we began this talk with North Korea, how can you know that you are self-aware if the people of North Korea they don't realize they're being lied to, and the people of China don't realize they're being lied to. And if you were a German citizen in 1935, you wouldn't realize that you were being lied to. Well, how can you possibly think that if you're living in America today, how can you possibly think that you know the truth? You don't have any knowledge outside of what the system has spoon-fed you. And that's all I'm trying to get you to realize, is that you have been lied to so much that you can't even see the prison that's been constructed for you. And if you're not a self-aware dreamer, then you're probably not used to practicing self-awareness in your waking life, which means you're probably not used to questioning the reality that's playing out for you every day, which means you're probably being controlled, being manipulated. The script is written for you. You are not writing the script of what happens in your life. That script is written for you. And I don't like that, and you probably don't like that. So when we come back in the next final segment, I'm going to share with you more ideas of how you can break free from that enslavement and direct your life in a self-aware, high consciousness way that creates abundance and creates spiritual truth and gets you closer to the divine, whatever you consider that to be. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay tuned. This is the Health Ranger Report on TalkNetwork.com. All right, welcome back. In this final segment, I'm going to cover ways that you can practice self-awareness. I want to strengthen your self-awareness muscles, so to speak. And these are mental exercises, but really they're beyond the brain. They are exercises of consciousness, the non-physical part of you, the mind, if you will, the spirit. There are things that you can do on a regular basis to become more self-aware. And self-awareness, again, is what is going to set you free and keep you free. Now, the very first exercise of this is very simple to describe, but it's hard to practice for most people. And it is simply this: question everything. Sounds simple, right? Question everything. It sounds simple, but it's very difficult for people to practice because they turn on the TV and they see CNN and they see, oh my gosh, there's been a mass shooting on TV. And they immediately accept it as true. Oh, it's happened. There's been a mass shooting. The CNN is reporting it. They're on the scene. They're showing me the footage. It has already happened. It's true. Right there, you have been hoodwinked. If you're really going to question everything, the first question is, hold on a second. Is this even real? Was this staged? Are there actors involved instead of real people? And I'm not saying every mass shooting is fake, by the way. Don't assume that that's the takeaway from this. There is real violence in our world, obviously, but we know that some of them have been faked. So the correct question, whether it's real or not, is to ask, is this real? And start looking for evidence of it being fake. This is an awareness exercise. Question everything, especially things that are told to you from sources that we know have already been corrupted by false authority, which is usually the government, the media, academic institutions, and so on. So let's say that you're reading in a magazine and there's been a scientific advancement that says we've found the gene for cancer, and we're going to be able to cure cancer by turning off this gene. Now, if you're gullible like most people, you're going to say, "Wow, that is so cool. These scientists are really making progress. We're going to conquer this disease." But of course, that's complete nonsense. A skeptical or self-aware person would immediately say, well, "Wait a minute. We know the industry of cancer doesn't want to cure cancer because they would all lose their jobs. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Actually, it's almost $1 trillion industry globally. Do you think $1 trillion industry would voluntarily self-destruct by curing the disease that makes them rich?" See, these are the thoughts of someone who is actually intelligent, self-aware, conscious, awakened, right? It doesn't mean you have to be a cynic on everything, but you do have to question everything. So no matter what is happening around you, question the motives behind it, question the factuality behind it, question, is it real? Is it not real? Even, we're in an election cycle right now. Politicians make promises. They make promises and they sound sincere. No one sounded more sincere than Barack Obama. except maybe Bill Clinton. He sounded pretty darn sincere too. So they make these sincere claims. Do they actually keep them? Of course not. So whatever they're saying on the campaign trail is just theater. It's designed, it's like an act. Here's Act 1, and then there's intermission. Here's Act 2. Barack Obama on stage telling you what he wants you to think he's going to do so that you vote for him, and then he later ignores everything that he promised and doesn't do any of them. And this is repeated over and over again, election after election. People fall for the promises, not realizing, hey, I should be self-aware, I should be awake, I should be questioning this so-called verbal reality that's being put forth by this speaker. Barack Obama, like all highly charismatic speakers, is able to, in essence, influence your mind to think false things are real. And that's how they control you. They literally get you emotionally involved into thinking, wow, this is amazing. Remember that woman that was crying with joy at the Obama election, screaming about, we're going to get free rent or something like that? Even she's on the record now saying that she was hoodwinked. Obama didn't keep his promises. But this is how politicians work the system, to take you away from conscious thinking and into automatic emotional reactions. And that's how they control you. Now, when it comes to dreaming, I encourage you to study lucid dreaming, as it's called, or self-aware dreaming. And you can become good at this. There are ways that you can practice this. Now, one of the ways to practice it, by the way, is to start questioning everything in your waking life and make it a habit, so that when you're in your dream, you're going to have the same habit and you'll start questioning things in your dream. But there's something very interesting that happens when you start to do this. And because I'm an experienced lucid dreamer, I can tell you how this works. One of the interesting things that happens in dreams is that text on signs will often morph and change right in front of you. If you read a sign in your dream, and then you look away, and then you look back at the same sign, and you read it again, it may say something different. This is classic kind of dream behavior. So one of the tips is that when you're awake in your life, read all the signs that you encounter in your waking life, and then look away and look back at the sign again and read it again and see if it's different. Now, you may think this is a silly exercise. It sounds silly. But actually, the reason it works is because if you're doing this during all your waking hours, when you are dreaming, you will think you are awake. It doesn't feel like a dream. Otherwise, you would have already known it. It feels like you're awake. So you have to practice doing this all the time that you're awake. And then it will happen in your dream, because it's a habit. It's a behavior that you have made a habit by doing it during your waking hours. Now, what will happen, by the way, is that you will look at a sign in your dream. You think you're awake. You think you're walking down the street and it's a regular day and you're wide awake. You don't think you're laying in your bed dreaming. And you'll look at a street sign and it says something like construction, men at work, whatever. Oh my gosh, we have to use a gender neutral term. Persons at work. How's that? See how that conformity works? Okay, anyway, that's just a distraction. You'll look away, and then you'll look back at the same sign, and you'll notice that it changed. Like maybe the word men actually did change to persons. Now it says persons at work. Because you're in your dream, and you're so convinced that your dream is real, you will make an excuse for why this sign changed. In your mind, you will justify it. You will say, well, you will think to yourself, well, while I looked away, they must have changed that sign. And these crews are really fast. Or you might think, well, it's a digital sign and they just updated it. They just changed the words while I was looking away. You won't be convinced that you're actually dreaming, because the dream is so real. The theater is so convincing that you still are unable to achieve the self-awareness and arrive at the correct answer, which is, aha, the sign didn't change. I'm actually dreaming this. And then you flip it around. I can make that sign say anything I want. That sign can say, happy birthday, if you want it to. And if you look at it and will it, it will actually change to say happy birthday. That's when you know you've taken control of the dream. You're now writing the script instead of the script being written for you. But I guarantee you that in nearly all cases, most people will, even when they see the most bizarre things in their dream, they will think they're awake and they will think those things are real, and they won't ask the correct question, which is, am I dreaming this? And this is why most people fail to be self-aware critical thinkers in their waking lives. Their minds are on an automatic sort of a believe anything software loop, you might say. They believe anything. And this is why when you have, right now in our world, you have Planned Parenthood chopping up live birth babies into parts and calling them tissue. I mean, literally giving birth, delivering babies, live birth, and then chopping off their heads and selling the intact skulls and heads and chopping up the parts and selling them for profit. You have an entire sector of society that denies that this is happening. They cannot grasp the reality of this because they are in a dream. And the dream has been, it's based on a narrative that is written for them by the Democrats, which says this isn't happening. Believe me, it's the exact same thing. If you ever talk to someone who's in total denial about this organ harvesting of babies that are born alive and then killed for their organs, those are the same people who, in a dream, they will not ever recognize that they're dreaming because they do not have the ability to become conscious. They are, in a very real sense, zombies. And this topic of zombies, by the way, is the last conclusion of this entire talk. We are living in a world of zombies. And zombies meaning people who are unable to achieve self-awareness. They cannot rise above the theater, the delusion, the script that has been written for them. They can't rise above it. They can't escape the matrix. They can't take the red pill and actually get to reality. They want to take the blue pill. They want to stay in the dream. They are controlled by the puppet masters of society, the corporations, governments, the media, academia, their peers, you name it. And even to some extent, some religious organizations as well are pulling the strings of people. These people are very, very dangerous, and they dominate society. So when you look at shows like The Walking Dead, that show, believe it or not, is an accurate metaphor for the zombie population, the zombie hordes, if you will, that are already moping around society, sleepwalking through life, clueless, oblivious to what is actually happening, unable to think for themselves, unable to make decisions themselves, and posing a danger to everyone else. The zombies are already here. They don't look like Hollywood zombies, but they are spiritual zombies, and they're already here. They're already all around you. And as things change in society, because we're in a time of rapid dynamic change, financial collapse, refugees, possibility of war, power grid collapse, whatever, as things happen, the zombies will be unable to respond to it in a conscious, self-aware way because they are not self-aware. And that's why they will be the zombie hordes that will be literally running from home to home trying to find food to survive. So there you go. Hope I've given you something to think about. Thanks for listening. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, for TalkNetwork.com.